Good day everyone. Today we'll be taking a look at the Ottoman Barbary States Revolution, aka the revolution where you get to play as a cool pirate. The revolution where all of your settlers turn into Barbary warriors instead of just becoming boring revolutionaries. And for those of you who aren't in the know, Barbary warriors are just reskinned Rodoleros, so basically this revolution turns all of your settlers into Rodoleros. Now many of you are probably wondering, why would I want that? Why wouldn't I want to go with a revolution that gives me a bunch of ranged revolutionaries who are midpoint between a musketeer and a skirm? In the late game, wouldn't you simply want to have just a giant big blob of ranged units with skirmisher-like traits? Maybe that's what you want. However, the Rodolero-like Barbary warriors are very good at sieging down buildings. They're also effective against enemy artillery once they get in close, because enemy artillery mainly has ranged resist. That doesn't do squat against a giant swarm of Barbary warriors just flying everywhere, cutting through cavalry, cutting through artillery, and filling in a key hole in the Ottomans' roster. Because the Ottomans, they don't get pikemen, they don't get halberdiers, they don't get rodoleros. Sure, your janissaries have a decent melee attack and are decently good at taking down buildings with high HP, but there's simply no substitute for that melee-focused monster of a unit that can just cut through cavalry and anything that it gets close to with reckless abandon. That is what you get when you do the Barbary States Revolution, and you don't just get 5, you don't just get 10, you get all of your villagers turned into these little monsters. So if you have an enemy that prides themselves in all of their buildings, watch as they find out just how effective melee infantry are at sieging down buildings. Yeah, it's gonna be a good time. And the Barbary warriors, you can train them from your town center for 100 food, and they only cost 1 pop. You can train them from your barracks. It's very easy to get a giant mass of them going. They probably shouldn't be the only unit that you're building, because of course giant blocks of Barbary Corsairs won't defeat giant blocks of ranged skirmishers in most late game battles. However, if you've already taken out a lot of the enemy's army, they are a very good unit for charging in and just sieging everything down. Kind of like the Hungarian Grenadiers. Only they move a bit faster, and of course they don't fire grenades. But a lot of your opponents are going to overlook the threat that Barbary warriors pose, because when they think of their entire base getting destroyed, they think cannons, they think howitzers, they don't think of a bunch of reskinned rodoleros charging in and lighting everything on fire. Now let's look at your cards. Your first card is Saleh Rovers, 10 Corsair Marksman Skirmishers and 1 Zebek Warship. Your next card, Infinite Zebek Warship card, you can send that as many times as you want on water. You have the Recruit Zebek's card, which gives you 2 but costs some gold. Then you have your Fort card, your 16 Corsair Marksman Infinite card, as well as your Barbary Warriors card. Those are all infinite, as are your 3 Falconets. Followed by your Citizenship card, as well as the card that gives you a very powerful Explorer, and also lets you gain gold from buildings destroyed. And then you have your 10 Air Berbers, you also have your Berber Ally Camel Riders, which cost gold but take up no pop, and then last but not least you have your Team Fours and Yada Riders. Some of the things you'll notice are new. They were added via the African Royals expansion, which then led to an update for the Barbary States, letting them get new cards so that you can get more units when you revoltize them. In addition to that, you still have the tried and true Barbary Warriors, as well as your Corsair Marksmen, which are fast-moving marksmen. The Barbary Marksmen fulfill a much-needed role within the Ottoman army, because the Ottomans don't have any true skirmishers. They have obelisk guns, but it's always nice to have some real skirmishers around, and that's what the Barbary Marksmen do. Additionally, the Barbary Marksmen, as well as all of your other infantry once you revolt, as the Barbary States, gain bonus against enemy villagers. So that means that when you take out an enemy town center, or you see enemy villagers running around this way and that, your infantry can easily take them down. The Barbary States gives you fast-moving infantry, one of those infantry filling in the missing Ottoman melee infantry gap in the form of the Barbary Warriors, while the other infantry, the Barbary Corsairs, fill in the missing skirmisher gap. It is worth noting that both of those infantry cost food, with the Barbary Warrior costing only food. Also, unlike other revolutions, the Barbary States villagers also cost food, which is one reason why the Barbary States is generally better on water maps, because on water maps, if you control the water, as you should, then that means you have already sent out a lot of fishing ships, which means you will have gathered a lot of food on the water. Gain that control, you can send in your Zebek warships. Xebec warships are mercenary warships, so they don't take up the build limit that you would see with your galleys, which means that you can have all of your Xebec warships, as well as your galleys and all of your other warships, and also you'll be able to build privateers as well. And it's worth noting that your privateer ships will be able to act like galleons in that they can build units and also they can build artillery, which if you control the water, then you might be able to take the shore, which will let you place down a bunch of falconets right behind the enemy's base, which is bound to give them a bad time. And while the Barbary states isn't nearly as cavalry-focused as the gun-happy Romanians or the Magyar Hazar-loving Hungarians, you still have the option of getting some allied cavalry, such as your Berber allies or your Zenyatta allies. Neither of those cards are really affected by the cavalry upgrades that you get at the stables, so if you haven't bothered to upgrade your Hussars at all the entire game, and you haven't upgraded your Cav Archers either, then that's okay if you go to the Barbary States, because neither of those upgrades will affect your Berber allies or your Zenyatta allies. So the Barbary Corsairs is also a great choice if, as the Ottomans, you've gone for more infantry-heavy build, which means you've macroed heavily towards food, as the Barbary States is a food macro-heavy revolution anyways. And yes, you don't get 4 ranged grenadiers, but what you do get is the option to send in 3 falcons, as well as the option to build a ton of Barbary warriors who do a lot of siege damage. And in large groups, they can just flow over the enemy base like a wave. Also, once you send that card that gives you the unique Explorer, you also gain gold from destroyed enemy buildings. So that pairs quite nicely with the use of Falks and Barbary warriors to supplement your already food macro-heavy economy with plenty of gold taken from destroying enemy buildings, which will in turn help you build more falconets, which will help you destroy even more buildings, so that you can then keep the pressure on the enemy and continue to press the attack. This Falconet and Barbary Corsair combo is extra effective with the Ottomans because the Ottomans have those cards that can greatly buff your artillery. And if the enemy does try and get at your Falconets, then of course you can just put a box of Janissaries or some other heavy infantry around them, or due to the sheer speed of Barbary Corsairs, they can sometimes intercept cavalry as they're rushing in. And as previously mentioned, due to their high speed and high speed damage, you can easily move your Barbary Corsairs to take out enemy banks, or to rush around and take out other key economic buildings of the enemy. And after you send in that card that also gives you the unique Explorer, that also means that every enemy economic building that you destroy is more gold in your own personal coffers. You can strengthen your own economy by destroying theirs. The Barbary States Revolution rewards a fast and aggressive playstyle, as you get fast-moving infantry, fast-moving allied cavalry, as well as the ability to power your war machine by raiding the enemy and taking down and sieging down the enemy, letting you keep up the tempo as you push forward. The Barbary States Revolution fills in holes within the Ottoman military by giving you melee infantry, as well as also giving you ranged skirmisher-type units, both of which cost a good amount of food, so an Ottoman player who's just been spamming Janissaries most of the entire game will be able to smoothly reboom and reset their eco because they won't have to worry about building a ton of plantations or anything, since their new economy will also mostly be focused on food. The Barbary States villagers costing food instead of gold like many other revolutions. So for an Ottoman player that's focused on food, it will be a smooth transition with the Barbary States Revolution. The Barbary States also pairs well with players who have already been making a bunch of falconets, so in conclusion, the Barbary States Revolution is an excellent revolution for the Ottoman player, especially the Ottoman player who's already been going for a Janissary and falconet build. You simply get more tools to use with this revolution. You get your melee so that you can help protect your falcons a bit better, your ranged skirmishers, and once you reboom, you don't have to worry about completely changing your macro. It is a smooth, fantastic, and fun transition for the Ottoman. Go out there, have fun, and go bully the Dutch by burning down their banks.